A couple of days after an estate sale had ended, I stopped by the house for something else and happened to look in the garage. That's when I spotted it. This old apothecary cabinet, still sitting there with its estate sale sticker, unsold and forgotten. I really wish I'd thought to take some pictures because you wouldn't believe how filthy and sad it looked, tucked away in that dark, dusty garage. And the transformation is pretty amazing. This one still has the price tag from the estate sale. So they were asking $100, which in itself is a great, great price. But on the last day of the estate sale, everything is 50% off. So when I called the realtor and asked about the cabinet, I only offered $50 and they accepted. This is so filthy dirty. I think it's probably gonna take me all day just to clean it. Look at this, it says open other end. So I think that piece of wood came off of a crate. And so whoever made this apparently just used whatever wood they had on hand. I couldn't believe when I pulled out this drawer and I found all of these handles. And then when I started looking at the drawers, you can see they were all once attached. So I have no idea why they took them off. And they are really, really filthy. I doubt that they're brass because they're rusty. Does brass rust? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. With this number of drawers, I'm definitely going to try cleaning these up and seeing if I can reuse them. I'm gonna start by giving the cabinet and the drawers a good vacuuming, and I'm using an old vacuum that I keep in my basement, so I don't really care how dirty it gets. Because the wood is very rough and rustic, the dirt has just really soaked into the wood. So this is going to be quite the process. And you might be wondering, why don't I just power wash it? Which I would love to do. That would certainly help. But I don't want to get the wood soaking wet because I don't want it to warp or expand at all, because then these drawers might not fit back in the slots properly. Well, nothing to do but start scrubbing. I mixed up some warm water with white vinegar and a little Murphy's oil soap. Even though I kept changing out the dirty water, my cleaning rags got so saturated with grime that I had to keep grabbing fresh ones just to keep going. I'm already questioning my decision not to power. I spent a few hours working on the cabinet itself, and by the end, I was so tired and covered in grime that I decided to leave the drawers for the next day. I'm going to go take a shower and get something to eat. Fall is officially here, and we are trying to take advantage of the beautiful weather, but our schedules are really hectic. That's why I'm so happy that Green Chef is sponsoring today's video. They make planning and cooking healthy meals super easy and stress-free. I love that Green Chef takes the guesswork out of meal planning. Everything arrives pre-measured and ready to go. They send you this beautiful recipe card with every meal. And on the back, it has step-by-step, easy, no-fail instructions. And you can choose from over 80 weekly menu options like keto, plant-based, or gluten-free. I picked the Mediterranean, and it turned out so fresh and flavorful. It honestly tastes like a restaurant meal made right at home. The portions are generous, the ingredients are vibrant, and everything is perfectly balanced. I also appreciate that there's almost no food waste. Everything is portioned so thoughtfully. Plus, I don't have to think about what's for dinner, which is a huge relief. So if you want to make your weeknights easier and still eat a healthy home-cooked meal, head to greenchef.com or use the link in my description and the code 50 Canterbury to get 50% off and free shipping off your first Green Chef box and 20% off for the first 2 months. Today I've been working on wiping down the drawers, which takes a while, cleaning the outside, and then it's really hard to kind of get all the grime out of the inside of the drawer. So I'm already on my second bucket of soapy water. So I found a couple interesting things that I wanted to stop and show you. Take a little break from scrubbing those drawers. Look at the bottom of this. I think that said Drummond. I noticed the bottom of another drawer had some paper, but it didn't have any words on it. But I think I want to try to take it off and save this little piece of paper. After some research, I discovered this is a label from a crate of Drummond's Horseshoe Tobacco dating from the late 1800s. So the apothecary cabinet is about 150 years old. And then this little drawer, look, it has this little thing right there. Like I think maybe they might have hid a key or something in there. I'm not sure. If anybody has any clue what that little box is for, let me know. First, I am just washing these handles in some hot soapy water just to get the dirt off. And then I'm gonna try something really different and see if I can't get the rust off. So you might have seen in some previous videos where I used this old crock pot. I filled it with water and a little bit of Dawn dish soap and put in old handles, and that gets all the old paint and crud off of it. In fact, if you just leave it for several hours, old paint will just fall right off of those old handles. But these handles don't have paint, they have rust. So instead of using just a little dish soap, instead, I'm going to use some of this Lemmy Shine dish detergent booster, which I know has some citric acid in it. And so I think this might work to get the rust off and really get those handles looking nice again. So I don't have very much of this left. And I do think I'll go ahead and just add a couple drops of dish soap. And hopefully it'll work its magic. I set the crock pot on low and just let the handles soak overnight. The Lemmy Fresh did a great job of removing all the rust and probably took off some of the original finish too. But that was okay because I was planning to go over them with gold rub and buff anyway. I didn't want the handles to look brand new, so I was really happy with the antique gold finish I ended up with. My husband kept asking where I was going to put the cabinet, but honestly, I had no idea. I just knew that when you really love something, you'll always find a place for it in your home. So I think this wall is going to be the best place for that cabinet. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my hanging card catalog cabinet. In fact, I really hate to have to take it down, but I've just kind of looked around my whole house and there really isn't any other good spot for it. So maybe I can find another good spot for the card catalog. I love these little vintage portraits, so I will definitely have to find a spot for them too. Oh, I'm not really sure how I attach this to the wall. Oh, I think it's on a French cleat. Oh, you know what? I bought a French cleat. I didn't make one. I bought a metal one. So I think I'm just not lifting up far enough. Voila! You might remember this is actually my old coffee table from the front living room. I sat it on some lumber so that it would be high enough that you could see it from over the back of the sofa. I love this old library table and was originally hoping to put the apothecary cabinet on top of it. But unfortunately, the table is only 48 inches long and the cabinet is 55 inches wide. Before bringing the cabinet inside, I needed to find something to sit it on. I've had this sofa table in a few different places over the years, but lately it's just been sitting in storage in the basement. It's a little bit smaller than the apothecary cabinet, but I think I can make it work. It's really my best option without having to buy or build something new. I took out the screws holding the tabletop in place and tapped it with a mallet until it came loose. Since the tabletop is an inch shorter than the cabinet, I'm going to replace it with a new piece of wood that's a few inches wider to give it better balance and proportion. I cut the board to the length I needed and stained it with some dark walnut stain I already had on hand. Then I attached it to the base with brad nails. The board wasn't quite deep enough, so I filled in the gap along the back of the cabinet with a couple of scrap pieces of lumber I found in the garage. Once the new tabletop was secure, I added a second coat of the walnut stain to help it better match the dark wood of the apothecary cabinet. My husband helped me lift the cabinet onto the sofa table. It's incredibly heavy, even without the drawers. The next step was putting all the drawers back in, and since I hadn't marked which one came from where, I figured I'd have to do a little trial and error to get them all to fit just right. To condition the wood, I wiped each drawer down with feed-in wax as I put it back in place. And the drawers were pretty uniform in size, so it actually went a lot quicker than I expected. Next, I needed to reattach the handles. Thankfully, I didn't have to go out and buy 42 handles, but I did have to buy a couple of small bags of screws, and they ended up being silver in color. I screwed into the existing holes, which made the process pretty easy, and then I applied gold rub-and-buff over the screw heads so that they would blend in with the color of the handles. I have 4 handles left. And these 3 longer drawers each had 2 handles each. So I could just put 1 handle in the middle of each of these. But I think instead I am just going to leave these with nothing for now. And maybe I'll look and see if I can buy some handles that are very similar to these. And I think instead, I'm going to put 3 handles on the drawers from this lower cabinet to help tie the 2 pieces together. Even though you can't see these drawers very much when you're far away, you can see them when you're closer up. I think I might sand this paint off. I think maybe I'll strip it first and then sand it so I don't have to sand so much. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these handles back in here for safekeeping and take these outside to strip. Citrus Strip is the only paint stripper that I use. It works really well and it doesn't have that obnoxious smell that you get with some paint strippers. You want to be sure to use an old paintbrush with your stripper because it's pretty much going to ruin your paintbrush. Once you have it fully covered and it's on nice and thick, I like to cover it with some plastic wrap. This is especially important on hot days because it keeps the stripper from drying out, so it continues to work at eating away at the paint.
Once it starts drying out, then it's not working anymore. So you want to keep it wet as long as possible. See, even already you can tell it's getting thick and just beginning to dry out a little bit. So we want to keep that moist. And so now I can go about my business, do other things, not even think about these for at least an hour, and let the stripper do its magic.
Since the stripper wasn't drying out, I could have left it for several hours, but after about an hour, it was ready to go. I peeled off the plastic wrap and used a putty knife to scrape away the paint. Underneath the black paint, you can see the white shellac primer I applied to these drawers years ago. To remove the remaining bits of paint, I scrubbed the surface of each drawer with fine steel wool dipped in mineral spirits. This usually takes off any remaining paint. There were still a few spots with some of the white primer and bits of the black paint showing through, but I decided not to sand these off. I actually wanted the drawers to look old and rustic so they'd match the apothecary cabinet. So I applied a couple of heavy coats of dark walnut stain and let it soak in overnight. The next day, I added a layer of black wax over the top of the drawers to give them an even more aged, time-worn appearance. Next, I attached the 3 leftover apothecary handles, centering one to each drawer, covering up the previous handle holes. In hindsight, I wish I had taken the sofa table outside so I could have used my orbital sander to distress the black painted areas. Now I really don't want to sand it indoors and create a big mess.
Before I style the apothecary cabinet, I am going to restyle this old roll top desk, and I'll tell you why. Since that cabinet is so tall and eye-catching, I feel like I want something less here. I don't want both of these spaces next to the built-in cabinets to be absolutely full from floor to ceiling with things. And some of the items that I remove from this desk area, I can hopefully use on the top of the apothecary cabinet. Although you know that I want to go out thrifting for a couple new things to put up there. So if you watch my channel all the time, then you know that I only just recently put this little hutch on the top of the roll top desk. And now that is exactly what I'm going to be removing. So I'm basically going to take it back to the way that it looked 6 months ago. This was a DIY. So the picture is still hanging from a nail. So it shouldn't fall when I pull the hutch out. Let's hope it doesn't. I can't believe I left those nails from when I had this organ piece hanging on the wall. I must have known that I was going to hang it back up there at some point.
I'll be honest, ever since I sat that little hutch on the desk, I couldn't stop thinking that the organ piece really belonged back on the wall. It's a much more unique piece, and I didn't have another place where it made sense.
If you're a subscriber, then you know this is one of my all-time favorite DIYs. My faux vivarium that has a real butterfly and a real bee inside. And so I don't want to put that up on the apothecary cabinet where you can't really see the insects. So that needs to go over here. My turkey feathers that I got for $2.50. And my Abe Lincoln figurine. So here's a couple pieces of scrap wood that I can use wherever I want something to be just a little bit higher.
I probably have close to 50 vintage and antique clocks in my house, but this one, despite being in terrible condition, is probably my favorite. So I love that I can give it a prominent spot on top of this apothecary cabinet.
I'm trying to decide if I want to do some book rearranging because I think I would like to have some bigger old reference books up there rather than that matching set. I stole these from the front living room. I feel like more people spend more time in here and will appreciate the books in this room rather than in a bookcase at the very end of my front living room that nobody usually goes into. All right, I think that's enough books up there. Since I have suitcases up above the other bookcases, I'm gonna go to the basement. So I did have a couple suitcases in the basement, but this was really the only one that I liked, that I thought coordinated nicely with the other ones. It's kind of cute. Obviously it needs to go a little bit farther down to be symmetrical or it's gonna bug me. So I could add more books, but I'd really like to add something else, but I'm not sure what. Oh, I forgot I had this tin and bird that were on top of the old card catalog. I've got this wood box that looks good up close. How does it look far away? Not bad. That's kind of cute. You know what it's missing? It's missing a plant. And I'm not going to be watering up there, so it's going to be a faux plant. What do you think? I will probably be tweaking it a little bit over the next couple days, but I'm pretty happy right now.
The next day, I added some old wood knobs to the 3 wide drawers and framed the label off of the antique tobacco crate. I hope you enjoyed seeing this old apothecary cabinet come back to life. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And tell me in the comments, what would you store in all those tiny drawers? Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next week.